Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy holidays, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. For those of you who are returning, thank you for coming back. And for those of you who are here for the first time, my show is about celebrating artists and their body of worth. What makes them worthwhile? How do they get from point A to point B and beyond? And today we have one of my favorite actresses from Broadway, musicals, cabaret, everything, you name it, she's in the house. That is the one and only Beth Leavel. I feel like the man in the chair just waiting for her to make her entrance. And here she is.
Hi, Richard. Hi, everyone. Happy holidays. I always feel like the man in the chair.
Do you really?
Oh, absolutely. And I wear that proudly.
Well, so do I. I mean, it's so funny. I remember when I first saw the show and I'm sitting there in the theater and I'm thinking, that reminds me a little bit of me up there. And then I heard Bob in an interview say, well, that's pretty pathetic for people who are sitting all alone in an apartment, just listening to albums and not getting out and being a part of the real world, which is pretty much where we all are right now.
Exactly. However, Bob may say that about man in chair, and yes, there is that element. But to me, it's like someone who just appreciates particularly musical theater and can live in that world and find joy in it while we're stuck in a pandemic. I've been listening to more cast recordings than I ever have. So
what was the last thing that you were listening to? And do you listen, like we used to listen to albums from start to finish.
Absolutely.
Do you listen to them that way or do you mix them up a little bit?
It depends on what I'm doing because we bought an exercise bike and I kind of loathe it. So I thought, okay, well, this is a great time to just plug some, earbuds in and pick an album. Hi, man in chair.
Album.
That, you're not that familiar with, and just listen to the entire thing, or until you can no longer pedal because you're out of shape and old. So the last thing I listened to, was Dear Evan Hansen from top to bottom, and then Company. That's what I'm starting now is Company.
I actually listened for the first time today from start to finish. I had a ball with Karen Mark and
really?
Buddy. Yes, I had never listened to the entire album, so that's what I listened to today. Beth, I want to ask you, how are you doing really in the midst of all this? Because it's affecting all of us in different ways.
Absolutely. I find it one day at a time, one moment at a time. I'm inherently an optimistic person, but also to have your work taken away from you. One thing I will say for us as artists, and I is that we are resilient, and I'm amazed at what we have done as artists to still keep our heart beating, to still feel relevant, to still feel like I'm expressing myself as an artist. So I've been teaching a lot and coaching, which I really love. It just keeps my heartbeat going, and it keeps me, just keeps the fires going. And I've been singing a lot and, talking to people that I don't know, like you, and getting to know you. And it's kind of thrilling. Do I miss my work? Absolutely. We moved, but bottom line is I'm okay. I'm okay. Thank you for asking. Well, and I love moments like this when I can just reminisce about things that brought me so much joy and continue to, even though I'm in a pandemic.
Well, we're going to celebrate you today. And one thing that you and I have in common, that we are both children of the Carolinas.
Oh my gosh.
I'm a South Carolina boy and you are a North Carolina girl.
Oh, related.
Yeah, we have to be.
Mama hug.
Yes. As I was going to say, we're both from the same neck of the woods, as they would say down in South Carolina. I'm from Conway, which is the gateway to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Oh, sure.
But I want to go back. I'm always interested in the 5-year-old self, the 5-year-old Beth Leavel. To me, 5 years old is that magical time before you're encumbered by friends in school and peer pressure and all of those things that are added on top of that. So I want to go back to when you were 5 years old and the type of world that you were living in.
Well, I was raised in Raleigh, North Carolina. My brother was 14 and a half years older than I was, and he eloped when he was 18. So I was really raised as essentially an only child. And I think I was a big mistake. I was like, you're what?
You were not. No.
Here we go. My mother was almost 40. And in the 50s, that was really late to be even considering having a child. So I stayed out of the way a lot. And I think that's why I realized I was funny and I could get attention. So I think that's when that started. I can't remember at 5 years old, but I do remember always getting laughs. And I remember being asked to be quiet in the classroom because if I felt like storytelling, and I remember a lot of this. Beth, can you come just for 1 minute?
Both.
I need you to be quiet. And I was like, what's wrong with me? So I think inherently I was a class clown just to get attention.
No,
hi, Dr. Freud.
Raleigh, North Carolina is a pretty much metropolitan area, but
Absolutely.
Did you grow up with a Southern accent?
I grew up with a lilt. My parents had, a lilt. And when I get tired or if I go down there, it definitely comes out. Like I still say things like I had a teacher that wrote down everything I said that was really Southern. Like I used to say 10, not 10, and pen, not pen.
And how did you say WATER?
Water.
Water, yeah.
Water.
Yes, water. There's an R in there in the middle that most people don't realize.
Yeah, there's a lot of, and I've been up here so long, and I remember I was so aware of it when I moved to New York City that I actually overcompensated. So I was, talking like this. So people had absolutely no idea. I had no authenticity whatsoever.
And what did your parents do?
My mother was a stay-at-home mom, but for a while she was a florist until my dad worked for the Coca-Cola bottling company forever. And then he decided he was at work all the time. So he was like Mad Men. He was developing commercials for the local ABC net affiliate WRAL in Raleigh, North Carolina. So one of my first things I ever did was he put me in commercials. And I remember I was, dressed up as a bunny for Roses, which no one knows. Roses, it was like a department store. And I hopped out of the
I knew Rose's department store.
Yes. And then hard drugs. I was, flipping fake hot dogs on a grill. Like you could buy the grill. I never said anything. I was just like stand up and model because I worked for free because I was Lynn Leavel's daughter. But it was fun. And he did that for a really long time. Then he retired. He really was, a generation of work. When he retired, he started working with a travel agency, and that afforded him and my mother, and occasionally me, opportunities to travel everywhere. One of the good things about that is he would bring groups to New York City, and they would always come to see my shows. So that was kind of cool.
And did you have a hi-fi in your house? Did you listen to albums growing up? Television, what were you watching
television always, because my father would have to watch his commercial spots that he had sold. I didn't know anything about musical theater growing up. Nothing. I would watch Lawrence Welk. There were musical numbers there, and whatever was on the one TV we had, and my parent hee-haw watched that. But the albums I listened to were mostly my mother's, classic Frank Sinatra. And always at Christmas, there was always, you could buy records from like Firestone.
Firestone, was it? Tire company.
So, and there would always be Bing Crosby and Nat King Cole and really the classic ones, which I still love to listen to. But, I wasn't big on listening to music. When the Beatles came around, that was huge. And I remember it being a big deal in 6th grade that my parents actually bought me their album. And I just would close the door and listen to it over and over.
And did you have a tape recorder? Did you record things that you heard on television? A
No.
lot of kids did growing up at that time.
Really? I should have.
Yes. Well, I want to ask you, arts and education is something that's very important to me. And were you exposed to the arts in school?
Not really. Now I think if the people growing up in the Research Triangle area, Raleigh, Durham, there's so much theater, so much art, so many opportunities to see theater, concerts, whatever. But back then, not so much. Even though randomly at the television station my father worked, they had a small opera company. So I remember seeing opera thinking, oh, that's cool, but nothing else. And occasionally, I've said this many times, one of the movies, occasionally three of us would go to see a movie. And this movie was the first musical I ever saw, that was The Music Man with Robert Preston and Shirley Jones. And I just remember leaving the theater so transported into that story with people singing how they felt and then dancing how they felt as well. And I thought, what is this magic? But again, I didn't really know anything. I didn't know what to do with that. There was a 6th grade play. I remember doing a play about some history figure. And I got a laugh. And again, isn't that funny? I don't remember anything about 6th grade except that laugh. Help me. But so it wasn't really until my senior year in high school where someone convinced me, thank you, Jan Herndon, convinced me to audition for Brigadoon. And I got the 3rd lead, and my life was, I never looked back. I remember, remember in high school, you would get cast and you would rehearse in the band room, and you'd probably rehearse for, 6 or 7 years before you did a weekend performance, and you knew you were going to tour. You knew that it was so good. But I remember the first moment sitting in that band room with all these people thinking, where have you been? And how can I stay in this world for the rest of my life? So, it wasn't an easy trajectory or a linear one, but Mama made it.
Well, what I love about what you just said was that you sat in this room with people. And this is a collaborative process. Even if you're doing a solo number, it's a collaborative process. It's all the people that are around you. It's a sense of community. You knew at that moment that you had arrived. Did you go home immediately and say to your mom and dad, this is what I want to do with my life?
I didn't think what I wanted to do with my life was actually something that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard them saying to me, they really, because, they loved me, they wanted me to, eat. So the possibilities of, Mom, I'm going to be an actress, was just ridiculous. But I knew something had opened, something had been released that I needed somehow to acknowledge. So I went to a small school. I went to Meredith College in Raleigh, North Carolina, and they had a minor in theater, which I did, but I have a major in social work and counseling.
Oh, wonderful.
Many, many times was all about listening and responding, which is all acting is anyway. But I did every piece of theater I could get my hands on. At North Carolina State University, at Raleigh Little Theater, I did a show in the cafeteria. I just did everything just to see what was happening. What am I feeling? What can I do with this? What can I do with this? Because as much as I loved my social work, I didn't want to do it as a living. And I remember I had an amazing teacher, Linda Bamford, and she pushed me to be uncomfortable and move on and try to find a way to make money from this passion. But I was way, way too chicken to move to New York City because I'd only been there once in my life and it terrified me. Remind me to tell you that story. So I went and I decided, let's go to school some more. So I have a master's degree, an MFA from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. And those 2 years changed my life. They just changed. All I did was just like theater. He's like, what's that? I don't know who Parendella is. What is this? What is that? And I feel like I just was one Southern sponge. And by the time I finished and had my MFA and I'd done Dolly for my thesis production, I was ready to make the leap, no matter what happened.
And when was the first time that you were paid for your craft?
I was there was a summer program at UNCG that we would go up to the mountains and perform, and I think I got like $200. I was like, woo! And I did a dinner theater.
Start. And did you get your equity card in North Carolina, or did that happen after you came to New York?
That happened right before I came to New York. The time between grad school and New York, I was cast as an intern at the Pennsylvania Stage Company in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Allentown?
Allentown! And I was there for 7 months, I think, and I did everything. I answered the phone. I worked in the box office. I was third sword carrier from the left and something. I got a pie in my face and flea in her ear. But at the end of it, they had promised me that I would get my equity card. So we did a small, almost like a TYA, Children's Theater, a version of The Apple Tree, and I got my equity card and was on the bus from Allentown. And a friend of mine had found us an apartment in Hell's Kitchen when Hell's Kitchen was Hell's Kitchen.
Yes.
And
what year did you come to New York?
1982.
I came in 79. It was
There
a
you
very different New York. Very different. So I want to hear the story about that first time that you came. Did you come alone, or did you come with friends? What happened?
Oh, it was very exciting. I was probably 12, and I came with my mother and father because it was the International Lions Club Convention. And it was in New York City, and we stayed at the hotel that was the Milford Plaza. I think it was called the New Yorker. I just remember it being so loud. But I don't remember a lot about the trip because I was 12 years old. But what I do remember is I had an opportunity on a Wednesday afternoon. My mother and her friend, who was also there because of the Lions Club, was going to go see Angela Lansbury in Maine. So I could go with them to see that. Or I could get on a subway with my dad and go to a Yankees game. And I went to the Yankees game. And I'm wondering if I had seen what would have happened if I'd seen Bea Arthur and Angela Lansbury in Mame when I'm 12 years old. I mean, our paths are our paths, whatever. I'm not regretting anything. But I'm wondering if that would have like fired that thing up quicker than my senior year in high school. But I didn't go. So really. And I just love the subway, and I don't remember anything about the game. But
again, it was a different New York, and so you were petrified. Was it, just the grittiness of what New York City looked like at that time?
Coming from Raleigh, North Carolina, the first time you're in New York City, it's a little overwhelming. It was loud. It was the 70s. It was just loud. It was dirty. And yet there's this energy in the city that I appreciated so much when I moved up here. But as a 12-year-old, it was a little terrifying. And I always remember my parents grabbing my hand to make sure I'm fine. I didn't wander.
I want to go back to that first apartment in Hell's Kitchen. Where was the part? Where was it?
45th Street between 9th and 10th. Rick Stonebeck and I lived there, and I slept on a couch. And literally 45th between 9th and 10th, I got to know many, many people.
I worked at the Green Room answering service.
Oh, you did?
Yes. Did you have an answering service when you first came?
I had bells are ringing.
Bells are ringing. That was the competition.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I do remember, the drug problem was huge in that block, and there was a lot of prostitution. But it was like, I'm sorry, excuse me, Miss Hooker, as I was trying to, get into my 5th floor walk up. But again, I've told people that I could care less. It was fabulous. And every Thursday, I know you'll remember this, every Thursday, I would, come down from my 5th floor walk up, go to the Smilers on the corner of 45th and 9th. And there was a kiosk there. And at the kiosk, there was the weekly publication of Backstage. And I had learned to drink coffee by then, right when I came to New York, I would go to Smiler's, get my coffee with way too much sugar, sweet and low. And I would find a place to sit down, and it was like my Bible. I would open the backstage and I would highlight everything, whether I was right for it or not. I was right for everything. Come on.
You're telling my story.
And I just kept auditioning and, just learning how do you get a job in New York City? That's something they really didn't teach us in grad school, or I just never learned that. It's like, this picture sucks. This isn't good enough. I have to figure this out. And then what do you mean my go-to audition song? Oh, I haven't thought of that. So I had so much to do and learn, and it was so thrilling, but I was so green and thrilled.
Well, I want to step back for a moment. What was your first survival job in New York?
I was really lucky. I didn't have to have that many survival jobs. I know, don't hate me.
No.
Because I had saved money, so I didn't have to get a job immediately. But I got the national tour of 42nd Street pretty quickly. But before that, I worked for a temp company and went out about 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
And then what else did I do? Oh, you know what I did? I'm sorry, how could I forget this? Which was really fun. Seems a little ridiculous now. I was a tour guide.
I did singing telegrams.
Oh, that's awesome. But I didn't know New York, but literally all I would have to do is this great company, which I can't think of the name. I would have to get groups of students just from point A to point B and to point C and back to the Edison Hotel. So I was learning so much about New York City, but I do remember, like, what bridge is that, Beth? I was like, well, that's the George Washington, and it was the Brooklyn. So I didn't do such a good job, but I was also able to, I went to the Statue of Liberty. I went to the, the World Trade Center. I went to the UN. These poor kids, there was a huge blizzard in 1982 at Easter, and these sweet, bless their heart, children, we had little, like little pumps on and hose to come see the UN, and there was a blizzard, and the buses weren't working, and I was stuck with 13 of them at the UN thinking, what's happening? So I remember, their feet were drenched, and getting them all in individual cabs that were still running and back to the Edison Hotel. That was a fun job. And, they were so interested in why I was in New York, and I would tell them about my auditions. That was a good temp job. And then before I got married, I was a waitress for 2 weeks because we needed money. I am not a good waitress. I learned very quickly. I'm very funny and I'm very entertaining, but that's really not your first go-to skill as a waiter.
Now, when you came to New York, did you have the headshots that you needed in a resume, or did you put all this together after you got here? And how did you find your way around all of that, just starting out?
I came up with, it was like, oh yeah, I have to have a picture. So I remember someone in Greensboro took my picture, but it wasn't comparable to the pictures that were being taken up here. So I remember going to Joe Albalda, God rest his soul, who took my pictures. And it was just kind of networking. Someone knew someone. It's like, Beth calls someone. It's like, oh, great, I'll call him. So I went, and he did my first round of pictures. And then once you start going to auditions and you start talking to people while you wait, I learned so much just from networking with these people who were there for the same reason I was and were new. And I learned a lot about what not to do. Mm-hmm. And then I really learned that I really needed a better song than what I was auditioning with.
And what was your go-to song when you first began?
I don't remember, but it was not really, I really don't remember, but I remember some friends that I had worked with at a dinner theater who I just adored, said, why don't you come over to our apartment and let's discover something? So, and my knowledge, my catalog of show tunes were slightly limited, particularly then. So we came up with a version of I Got Rhythm where I would go, and I would hold this C sharp for eternity, and I kind of made it funny. And I remember that really opened some doors for me because I was able to be funny. I was able to belt, I kind of personalized it, brought my own little spin to it. But I remember auditioning for a summer stock thing shortly after. Mm-hmm. And I had been using this song for a while, and the director walked in, and it's 4 degrees of separation up here anyway. And we I swear, I think it was Jerry Mitchell. Forgive me if it wasn't. But before Jerry exploded, he was so sweet. And he said hello and back and forth. And he said, "Beth, what are you singing?" Then he went, "I hope it's not I Got Rhythm." And I remember thinking, and I had nothing else, but I was like, oh, I think I was so mortified. It's like, girl, you have to get better. You have to get better. The kids now all have books and are so professional and prepared. I just learned by being bad and wrong, and then growing from that. So
you mentioned also one thing that I also remember so fondly, and that was going to an audition. You'd see a lot of the same kids around.
Yeah.
You would talk to each other because no one had their phones at that time.
Right.
A lot's changed, let's face it, since we both first came to this city. What are some of the things that you love most about what's changed in the industry? And what are some of the things that you miss terribly?
Oh, gosh. Well, things I love most about the industry, it's hard to be objective because now I'm working and getting paid in the industry most of the time. So to actually feel so connected to this community and New York and my work is phenomenal. I think the pressures, not sure I felt as pressured as some of the kids coming in now. And I think that's kind of like, boo, that I always say when coaching and teaching and stuff, that we need to just celebrate your singularity. That's all we have as artists. That's who we are. That's what we need to grow and learn and explore and discover and make mistakes and learn. And I think sometimes now that the pressure is greater than it was when we were there, maybe. And I do remember, maybe I never thought about that. Maybe because we didn't have cell phones, we talked to each other so much more. I mean, I remember going, if you're having to wait it from 8 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock, you get to know the people around you.
Right. That's right.
I remember going to someone's club act down in the Village all by myself. I was so proud of myself just because we'd struck up this great conversation.
Now, you've done both theater and club acts. Do you have do you love that intimacy of being in a small room? You recently did a show, I in my research, and I'm so sorry I missed this, where you just were free-flying. You were taking requests from the audience. You said in the article that I read, you may even bring people up. That comfortability on stage, where did that come from? And is it from years of doing what you're doing?
Well, yeah, some people call it comfortability. Some people say you're an idiot. I don't know. It makes me feel like the moment will be so organic. You can't really do something like that, say at 54 Below. There has to be a set list, but I love to blur the lines and I love to be in the moment and have a relation. Why am I doing it unless I'm doing it for you? I've heard myself sing Ladies Improving. I don't need to hear that again. But to experience it again with the group of people that are there, to just witness all that Beth Leavel is going to bring to the room. And I don't know, I just like to make it personal. And I like to talk to the audience. And I love it. Like if there's a couple of shows I do that I don't want to know the set list. Just let's go. It just seems fun, more fun to me. I do prefer 8 shows a week over me by myself, with no character to hide behind. It's terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
It's thrilling. It's just terrifying right before you step on that stage. It's like, what are you doing? No one cares. Stop it. And then you get out there, and that's when that relationship with my scene partner, the audience, and myself, that's when it becomes really joyful. So by the end of it, I'm always so thrilled. But at the beginning of it, I think I'm just, it's like, don't ever do this again. But then I do it, and then I want to do it again. But my preference is hiding behind a character.
Now, I'm going to put you on this level with Ethel Merman and Mary Martin and these great Broadway divas who have had great songs and characters written specifically for them.
Wow.
You've been very, very fortunate with that.
I really have.
What was the first time that a role was crafted around your personality?
Tess in Crazy for You. Crafted. It was interesting. I had 7 auditions for Crazy for You for Polly, the part of Polly. And I think at the end of it, they felt so bad that they had put me through that and that I wasn't going to get the role, that there was a tiny little ensemble character named Tess. And God bless Mike Ockran and Sue Stroman and Paul Gimignani. They lifted her off the page and allowed me to put my DNA all over something for the very first time. And that was thrilling. That was thrilling.
And let's move forward to 2005 or 4 when you first started hearing about the Drowsy Chaperone. How did that all come about?
Oh, that's an interesting story. I didn't know. I mean, the name, the Drowsy Chaperone, you're like, what is that? And my agent, I had an audition for it, and I knew Casey because Casey was in Crazy for You with me. He was Junior, one of the dancers, and his career was just taking off. This is like his first one he was going to direct by himself and choreograph. So I remember they sent me the musical, sent me the script, and it was one of the first times ever that I literally was sitting in the chair reading it and just laughing hysterically out loud. So I was very excited to audition for it. The part of Beatrice Stockwell, however, was kind of vague. She wasn't really on the page yet. As a matter of fact, the sides I was given is like one-liners, and it's like, look, I don't know what really to do with. I don't know what to sing for this. I don't think Stumble was written yet or anything. So I just pulled. I think I sang 100 Easy Ways to Lose a Man because I thought, well, at least it's storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And then I read the sides. I was okay. Again, it didn't really have anything to sink your comedy into or even your storytelling in. But, sometimes you just want to throw it all out there and see what sticks. Maybe something will go, oh, I see that in her. Or, oh, I saw that in her. So I got a call back, went and did the same thing. A couple of weeks went by, and this never really happens, but because Casey is a friend, he called me and he said, Beth, and I went, I know. I said, I know I didn't get it. I said, I don't. He's like, yeah, you did. I said, I don't feel like I'm the right person to bring this woman to life. I'm not sure I'm the one that can lift her off the page and let her live in this universe. He said, yeah, I think you're right. And he said, maybe we want someone older. This was a long time ago. So they went to Los Angeles, and, oh, I wish I knew more stories. I'm going to pick Bob Martin and Casey's brain again. But I know that Eartha Kitt auditioned for it. Tina Louise, Joan Van Ark. I mean, all these fabulous TV divas, except for Eartha, who's just a, fabulous diva all around. Mm-hmm. And nothing worked out. I don't know why. They came back. They kept auditioning. I think they offered it to someone, but for some reason they passed. They changed their mind. So literally what felt like years later, I get a call from my agent going, I have a job offer for you. She's like, woohoo, offers. I'll take it. I don't care what it is. This was like a really low career. What am I going to do for money? And I had 2 kids by then. And they said, you have been offered the role of Beatrice Stockwell in The Drowsy Chaperone. And I said, no, I haven't. I'm so sorry. You made a huge mistake. So I made Mark call them back. And he called me back and he said, yes, you've been offered Beatrice Stockwell. You leave in 3 weeks for a 3-month out-of-town tryout at the Amundsen Theater in Los Angeles. So literally it was like, children, pack your bags. Mommy's going to LA.
Now, obviously, we know what you brought to the role, but what do you think changed?
I think they trusted once we all got in the room together, and we did there was so many opportunities to grow and learn, and we did improv games, and we did a lot of games, which really helped me and the creatives. And I've told this story before, so sorry if you guys have heard this before, but there was a game called Hot Seat. And for the first 2 weeks of rehearsal from 10 to 12, every morning we would do games or watch theater, watch movies from the 20s so we could figure out the tone of our storytellers. And that, yes, they're heightened, but they're still authentic and truthful. So I remember the hot seat game was when you sit and, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. It's like, oh, I'm on fire. Woo! Not really. You sit in a hot seat, and of course, we had to write a bio. Casey's really big into bios, and I remember writing my bio, thinking, "This is such crap." I just didn't know what to say, so I remember writing something like, "Ooh, Beatles was raised in London. Her mother and father were, stalwarts in theater." Blah, blah. I was like, blah, blah, just. So anyway, I remember
you're rolling your eyes while you're doing all this.
I really was, because I was really making it up. Nothing. Not only was I making it up, but nothing was affecting or giving birth or lifting this woman off the page for me. So I remember we were doing the hot seat where, we're introduced as your character and you come and sit on a seat, and the creatives and the cast members all fire questions at you as your character. So when you don't know who you are, it's sometimes very interesting trying to figure out how to answer and respond. You're really thinking in the moment, making good and poor choices. But one of the last times, Casey, for the first time, it was my turn for hot seat. I'm like, here we go again. I'm going to disappoint everybody. And I remember he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Dame Beatrice Stockwell." And that's the first time he had used the word dame. And I remember walking to my seat. What? Thank God I put on pants tonight. Let me show you. Even though they were pajamas. These are my pajamas. So I remember walking to my hot seat, and the cast and the creatives like stood up and were like, "Oh yeah!" Like I was this huge, phenomenal star, which I'd never felt either. And I remember doing this, going, "Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I just so much appreciate." And that's where she started. I knew from that moment on, and I think so did the creatives, that she's this crazy, fabulous, narcissistic diva who demands an anthem in every show she does, whether it's worthy or not.
And you get them too.
Then we went to the room, with Stumble, and they started going, "Can you hit this? Can you hit this?" And just that energy, I felt like that's where it started. And then we would go, and again, Casey and the creatives give us such permission to walk into a room and again, throw everything we have safely against the wall and see what sticks. There was no editing. So I remember putting my hand in front of Sutton's face. I remember pulling out a thing to cover her up. It was just, and from then on, it really started rolling. So.
And as you were doing this, did you ever censor yourself at all, or did you just go in with full abandon?
I went in with full abandon, only because I felt like, I'm getting better at it. But back then I felt like I had permission to do that. That's what I was asked to do. So it was really fun and freeing and terrifying. But yeah, there was no editing.
And how long was this process?
The show?
I'm sorry?
Have you seen the show?
Yes.
No, there were no.
So, and how long did this go on before the show started to gel and come together?
It happened pretty quickly. I mean, not just because of me, but because of everything. And again, Casey's real big, and so is Bob. And they're very big on, here's your new scene today. Here's this, here's your new lyrics. So there was constantly changing, even in rehearsals, but particularly when we got to previews and we were hearing from our scene partner what was landing and what wasn't landing. I do remember at the Amundsen, the very first preview. I mean, the show starts in the dark and you hear, "I hate theater." Well, it's so disappointing, isn't it? Now, is that funny? It's hilarious to me. Danny and Sutton and Georgia and Eddie and all of us over stage left in the wings, because I think at that time we had offstage singing and we were all literally holding hands, waiting to see if this show and us had a life. And the audience went ballistic. They went ballistic for it. And then so many things changed. And we actually had a rather small turnaround before we knew that we had the Marquee Theater. So we were still hot with the energy from LA. And believe so much in the show. So.
And you, of course, were nominated for a Tony Award, and you won. Where were you when you heard that you had been nominated?
I was asleep. I didn't want to. I'm not a person that, even in subsequent nominations, I don't want to sit in front of the TV and do that. I just can't. I can't do that. It's like, just let it go. If it happens, it happens. But I remember my husband at the time, John, came in crying and said, "You were nominated." And then he said, "It's even as good as that. Is it Danny was nominated?" Danny Burston. So we just had a big cry, and then it was a whirlwind. It's been a whirlwind ever since 2006.
Well, I have some photographs that were sent to me by a couple of your friends that I'm going to share. We're going to jump ahead because not only you've been nominated 3 times, won the one, and there are many more in your future, I know. But, and I'm not jinxing it, but you also had your portrait at Sardi's.
I know.
And I have a few photos from that night, thanks to my dear friend, Joseph Marzullo.
Thank you, Joe.
Yes.
Oh, see?
Yes.
Drowsy family.
And there's the portrait.
Hey, that's pretty good. I remember thinking, that's good.
Yes. Joseph Marzullo. And there. And this. And I'll show you my favorite picture. Laura. And here you are. I love this photograph.
Thank you.
I just love this.
My gosh.
So what was the experience you got the call that your portrait is going to be up at Sardi's? It's just an amazing thing.
It's such an honor. It's such an honor. And I'm glad it happened, during the prom, because that show meant so, so, so much to me. And to have my Drowsy family there and my prom family and all of the people that were special to me there.
And, for your opening night of prom, excuse me for interrupting, you need something fabulous to wear. And of course you had it.
Hey, thank you, David Joseph.
And there you are with David Joseph.
Yes, bless another.
My dear friends.
I have this blue dress I'm going to be wearing that he designed whenever, I don't know, I put on pants again. Yes, and I'm wearing his mask too. If you ever need masks, David.
Oh, I've got his mask.
I have a mask that he made called my DeeDee mask. So of course it's sequins.
So let's talk about DeeDee. I mean, it's such a phenomenal character, and again, this was molded around you.
Yes, and unlike Drowsy, I didn't have to audition for it. Literally, I got a call, and Casey had called the 4 of us. We like to call ourselves the Olds. But for Brooks, Angie, Chris, and I to come just do a table read of something that Jack Fertel had an idea based on this story that actually happened about these 2 lesbians in Mississippi. And Bob Martin had been associated with it, and now Matt and Chad had been working on it. I remember after Elf, it was so much fun with all of them. And I remember asking Matt and Chad, it's like, what, are we doing something again? And you could see their wheels just going, mm-hmm. I'm like, can you tell me? It's like, yes. So cut to, it must have been a year later that we all sit around and we read the first draft of Prom. And that was 8, maybe 9 years ago now. So it's been in my life and will continue to be in my life forever. But
Absolutely.
For 9 years, and to have something as fabulous as DeeDee Alan written for you, that is, I could quit now.
Don't.
I would be content with birthing her and giving her out to the universe.
Now, you've also done so many iconic roles at the Muni. I actually have a photo here of you as Dolly at the Muni.
Oh, subtle, so subtle.
Yes. But that stage, of course, is such a magnificent stage. And to be able, and you've got this powerhouse voice. I mean, what is it about the Muni? Because it's also a big space to fill. What do you love most about performing at the Muni?
I love the people there, like Mike Isaacson and all the people that he hires. But one of the things that makes the Muni so special is that it's 11,500 people. So it's theater like you've never really done before. It's outside, so there's all these fabulous elements. But the thing I think most, and the production values are amazing, but it's the St. Louis audiences, it's like community. The Muni is their family. So I just feel like I'm sharing this family tradition with generations and generations of St. Louis families that have been watching the Muni since its inception. You just feel like you are part of a lineage that's so special.
Do you like being on the road?
I've never hardly ever been on the road, which is I kind of regret it.
Mm-hmm.
I wish, when I'd been single, I was like, let's go on a tour. Never did. And then the 42nd Street, I was only out for 7 months, maybe 7 or 8 months before the role became available in New York, and I played Anytime Annie in New York. But yeah, what a great way to see the world in the United States, particularly if you're touring around with a big old hit. And then I had kids, so I didn't want to leave them.
Now, of course, going back to these iconic roles that have been written for you, but you've also played these iconic roles that have been written for others, such as Dolly and Mama Rose and everything. What do you bring with a role like Dolly? What was it about Dolly that resonated with you that you wanted to do it? Was this something that you pursued, or did they contact you and say, we want you to play Dolly?
They did. They contacted me. Rob Ruggiero, who directed Dolly and the Muni, we have such a amazing working relationship. And to go in with these iconic Dolly and Mama Rose, I always need someone to trust driving the train of these beautiful women and shows. And Dolly as Mama Rose, Mama Rose particularly, I was so, I did it, that theater I was talking about at UNCG in the mountains that I got like $200. That was my first Mama Rose. I was 20. And since then, I've been really anxious to put those shoes on again now that I was old enough to do it. And then, so they cast, my fiance, Adam Heller, as Herbie, and Rob was directing, and it was the Muni. And it's such a safe, glorious place to work. And my big concern was, how am I going to bring my singularity to these iconic roles that so many fabulous, fabulous women? Am I going to be worthy enough, to make Angela Lansbury, Patti LuPone, Bernadette Peters, all of these women who have done, Carol Channing, who've done those roles, and still give myself permission to be Beth in these roles and to sing these songs, under stars for 11,000 people. And Gypsy, at the end, Rob had this amazing idea. There's a turntable. And during Rose's turn, literally I crossed upstage right and stood still, and the turntable turned as I'm going, I had a dream. And it's like, oh. It was unbelievable. It was theater magic. And that's one thing that happens at the Muni. It's magical, just all the elements that come together. And I'm lucky enough to do things like Mama Rose and Dolly. One night at Dolly, did you hear this story that it started raining so bad?
You want to share this story? Yes.
Yeah. It's, right when Act One is coming to an end, it starts to drizzle, and they're so cautious about safety. But then it kind of stopped. Apparently the storm moved on. So we started Act Two with elegance, dun, dun, and it starts raining a little bit, but just a little bit. And then the Waiter's Gallop starts. And by then it's kind of raining, but I'm already at the top of the stairs. And when you're at the Muni, when you're at the top of the stairs, you're like,
you're in heaven.
Stories high.
Yes.
And they're talking to me, and they're like, I said, I'm okay. It's just drizzle. It'll pass. I'm okay. I'm okay. And then I hear, da-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na. Well, what happened was that storm turned around and came back. So by the time I'm walking down the stairs, it's full on raining. And I see the dance captain, Mike Isaacson, all the crew looking at me, just waiting for me to go, you want to stop? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. So I'm walking, hello, Harry. And I'm wiping water and rain, and they're just holding on to me. And I realized, all the umbrellas are up now in the audience. I said, we are finishing this number. Everybody feel good about that? We have to finish this number before it's called. And by then my feather was like, we did the whole number. The musicians in the pit one would put an instrument down, and they would hold the umbrella over another instrument so they could still play. The audience was on its feet cheering us on, and there was a passerelle, and I remember pausing at the passerelle thinking, is this going to be slippery? It's just trying to be for the dancers and myself. And Josh Waldron, one of the dancers, held out his hand. He went, I gotcha. And we went across the passerelle, and we finished, and it was, again, this connection with the audience that only live theater gives you. And
it's also a testament to true artistry. I mean, you're definitely in the moment of what's going on. You can't ignore the fact that it's pouring rain. Every single person out there with their umbrellas, and
just no one cared. It was just, it's hard to explain that feeling. But next to childbirth and the Tony Award, it's one of the most spectacular moments of my life. And literally, that never go again. Dun. And ladies and gentlemen, lights up, and they called it, and the audience just cheered. It was like, thank you for giving us that. All these phenomenal dancers, and me with my wet feathers.
Now we're going to be moving towards the end of our program in a moment, but I want to go back. Today, believe it or not, marks 278 days since our theater shut down.
Really?
It's 278 days. Sorry to bring that to.
Okay, I feel every day.
But what did your calendar look like going into this year?
Well, there's a little thing called Devil Wears Prada that was happening. We were supposed to, I missed, oh my gosh, like 10 concerts that I was supposed to do. That was canceled. I was supposed to be at the Muni this summer doing Mama Morton in Chicago. And Prada was going to do a huge workshop this summer. And then after the workshop, next month after, sometime, we were going to go to Chicago for our out-of-town tryout. So that's been postponed, but it's still definitely happening. Of course, everything has to wait for everyone to be safe and a vaccine, and just reinventing what theater is going to be now that all this pandemic has happened. And I think it's going to come back stronger than ever. But we're still in that.
Yeah, God willing. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Transitory period. But
I also want to ask you, as we're going into the holidays, we are in the midst of the holiday season. Since you've been in New York, was there a particular holiday where you were away from your family, you were not able to be there, and your memories of getting through that?
I never, thankfully, had to be away. Particularly, I've never been away from my children ever on Christmas, except this year. Mm-hmm. We're going to figure out, I don't know, they live pretty close to me in New Jersey, so I'm thinking about doing a drive-by, but we have to do what we have to do. But this is the first time ever being away from my kids, so it's going to be a big Zoom. So it's like Adam and I for Thanksgiving. It's like table for two.
Huh, exactly.
And a lot of Zooming. It's just temporary. We what's that saying? We're not together today, so we can be together tomorrow.
Amen. And is there anything on your bucket list that you haven't done in your career that you really want to do?
I don't feel I could ever say, there's something I haven't done. I've been so blessed and lucky, but I am ready for the next DeeDee or Beatrice Stockwell. I love giving birth to original roles written by extraordinarily smart people who make me look funny and special and who take care of me. And I look forward to that. I don't know when it's going to happen, but we'll see. Until then, we're going to do a little Devil Wears Prada.
Well, I know this is going to sound like a cliche, but I'm glad that 5-year-old Beth Leavel made her way to New York. God bless you.
She had no idea, but she's kicking and screaming.
For everything you've done. And as I'm drinking my water tonight, I'll be thinking of you and, North Carolina and, all that's happened. We're at the end of our show. But before we end the show, I want to thank everyone for being here. I hope you had as much fun as I did. I think you're the best. I just love you so much.
Thank you so much for giving me a reason to put on pants.
Thank you. Me too.
This is how we celebrate right now. Let's talk about the things that brought us joy and reminisce.
Exactly. So I want to thank everybody for being here. If you enjoyed the show and if you don't mind, please put your thoughts in my guest book at richardskipper.com. That helps to sell the show in other markets. I also want to let you all know that tomorrow night at 7:00, I'm going to be celebrating Joy Lober, and she has the Broadway Mentors program, and she does incredible work, and she's also had a phenomenal career, so it's going to be fun to celebrate her. I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list and go to your sixth friend that pops up and order 2 masks from David Joseph.
Yeah.
Myself. Keep one for yourself and send one to that 6th friend that's there. Just go out and do something nice for somebody else. Now, Beth, before we end, I'm going to give you the final word. Anything you want to say about anything that we've talked about that you want to expound upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any message that you want to put out to everyone who's watching at this time. Well, thank you for doing this.
Thank you again. Thank you, Richard. But I just want to reiterate what you just said, particularly now. I love that idea of your sixth friend on Facebook. But take care of each other right now, which means take care of you. Check in on people, and more than anything, one thing this pandemic has taught me is just kindness is so important.
Amen.
Kind and take care of yourself. As my friend Josh Lehman says, having a good day, you're nailing it. Having a bad day, you're nailing it. Let's be patient so we can all celebrate and be in the theater again and see each other in Hell's Kitchen.
Thank you. Love you, Beth. Thank you.
Happy holidays all.
You too.